Yeah, so sometime back I built this application which helps me, summarize YouTube videos and channels. So as I was saying that I consume a lot of YouTube content, and so I wanted something which in which where I can paste multiple video links and get a combined summary or something. Like a lot of times when I'm watching videos, I'm interested in specific concepts or specific terms. So I don't want to watch a 2 hour podcast. I just want something which is information that is around my topics of interest. So I built something for that some time back, and then OpenAI Dev Day came, and they announced so many new features. So I was kind of excited to try them out. Sorry, to try them out. And so basically what I have been trying is uh, to get these newer features and adding to the application that I had already built. So for my application, I already had the backend ready, I had the UI ready also. And so this whole exercise has been, how do I use this assistants API and these especially function calling to enhance the application that I already have. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. So,
Yeah, thank you.
so yeah, let's start. Um, so in the last OpenAI Dev Day, is my screen visible? Yeah, it's not. Yeah, so in the last OpenAI Dev Day, Sam Altman introduced a lot of new features like Assistants API and GPTs. We won't be covering GPTs today, but I really found this part of Assistants API very interesting because, as it says, that it allows you to build AI assistant, which has been there a lot already. Like you have so many types of chatbot, but what was very interesting was this can leverage tools and external knowledge to help with whatever the user is asking. So this Assistant API, it basically supports three types of tools. First is code interpreter, second is retrieval and function calling. So basically what these things enable is that, let's say you ask a chatbot or you ask an assistant what is 3 times 3, it will most probably fail in trying to calculate that value. But these APIs, these even GPT-4 models, they are good enough in coding. So what they can do is they can write code for it, and then when they write code for it, then at that time you can basically pass the input value of 3 into 3 into that code, and you can get results that way. So basically, this the idea is that the uh, code interpreter as a tool gives so much more capabilities to our chat based assistants, that you can basically ask them to create visualization. You can basically ask them to do anything that a Python program could do. So internally what they do is that these code interpreter, uh, this assistant will basically request an action from these external tools, and these tools will run independent. So for a code interpreter, they will have a Python console, and where they can write the program and execute it. For retrieval, they have built in something. We don't really have um, like much leeway in how to control retrieval. They have given a default option there, so you can upload your own files. Obviously, there's a limitation on the size of files and what could be the total size of files that you can upload. And you can basically ask any question that you can think of from those files. So I think this retrieval augmented generation, which is very active right now, so they have given uh, a native uh, a native method of doing that, in which is inbuilt to the assistants API. So you don't have to write code for how will you manage chunking, and how will you manage so many different aspects of trying to improve the retrieval accuracy. All that is taken care of by the people at OpenAI. So they have given this retrieval of tool as a supplement to the assistants API. So now, basically, what a lot of companies were already doing, that they were building their own chatbots and trying to link it with their RAG systems. They that is available in assistants API directly. And the last and the most impressive thing for me was function calling. So, which we'll discuss in detail. So, in function calling, you can you can create an assistant and you can pass to that assistant function signatures that are present in your code. You can give their function definitions, and you can explain what these functions are supposed to do and what their parameters are. So you can pass these to the model, and let's say I have a function which yeah, which basically calculates the weather in any particular city. So now if I expose my assistant to, let's say, any user, they can ask in a very natural form, like, can you tell me what is the temperature in Bangalore right now? So what the model will do is it will convert this text into a function signature, and basically this allows in a very new way of interacting with code. So previously, what would have something, if you would have built some sort of an application where of all the possible cities in the world, you would scroll down to or select or type in Bangalore, and then that thing would be run in the background, and that will give you the results. So these language model, because they are so good at natural language, it gives a new method of of how we can interact with code. And to bring it even one more level up, you can all these current speech to text models are so nice that you can basically convert anything that you're saying into text, and that text can be passed to these language models. So yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting to see how we take input from the user evolves through all this. And yeah, so that's a very high level of introduction. And what we'll do is we'll cover examples of assistant API and function calling, so that we can understand in code also how that happens. And in their documentation, they have given very rudimentary examples to understand the concepts and how these things work. So we will also look into an actual application where we can see how these features can be leveraged in real setting also. Okay, so to understand assistant, there are a few things that we have to first talk about. Um So there are two ways to create an assistant. One is through command line, which is basically in your Python code. You can create an assistant with something like this, where you can mention what is the name of the assistant, and then you can give instructions of what kind of behavior it should follow, and you have to obviously mention which model it should use to do this to work underneath, and the kind of tools that it can use. So tools can be a code interpreter, retrieval, um, and function calling. And another way of doing this is in UI. Yeah. So you can create your assistants from here also, and you can basically create a new assistant, and you will be giving the same information here. What is the name? What are the instructions that you have to follow? And what if you want to use function calling, you have to give a function definition in something like this, in a format like this. We will cover this soon because it seems quite not very Pythonic from get-go, but yeah, we'll discuss about this. So in the UI also, you can select what all tools that you want to select, and then You can upload any files that the assistant will be leveraging. And yeah, so it has become this easy to create a chatbot. And what you can do is later on you can connect to these assistant in your code, and then you can easily use it as a chatbot. So once we have this assistant ready, then we have to create a thread. So yeah, a thread represents a conversation. So the people at OpenAI recommend that creating one thread per user as soon as the user initiates the conversation. So let's say if you have a chatbot in production already, then you have to build or write code around, okay, what is the conversation history with this particular user, or what has been the total context till now. And then you also have to build measures of how do you, because the model underlying all this have a fixed context length. So you have to come up with measures of maintaining that the context for a chat or for a conversation does not go more than what is the maximum length of tokens that is allowed by the model. So you have to write a lot of code for all that. So thread is basically a solution to that thing. So every time you're initiating a conversation, you just initiate a thread. And to interact on a thread and a thread, and to interact between a thread and an assistant, you have to pass message. So generally, there are two types of messages that are there in the OpenAI API. One is the uh, role, user role, and the other one is the assistant role. So what we do is that we create these message and then we add to the specific thread ID that is there. And we have to mention what the role would be. By default, we don't have the option to add messages for the role of assistant. But yeah, so basically you create a message which, so this content is nothing but the prompt that the user would be inputting through a UI or even through command line. Yeah. So once you have this, so basically you have to link a particular prompt to a thread ID. And then once this message is created, you will have something like this, an object representing what is the thread and all the different properties that it has. Now you can add a lot of messages. So let's say I have a app that that is for, I have a chatbot which is there for phone repair. So let's say a user joins the chatbot and first he or she says that, okay, I have this problem in my phone. And in the next prompt, it is mentioned that it has not been working since so many days. And in the third prompt, it the person adds that I currently live in this city. Do you guys support here or not? So the flow, what would be is like for all the three messages that we just discussed, there will be three separate messages would be created for them. And then now it is time to run these things, right? You have to pass these things to the assistant. So for that, we use the run uh, threads.run. So now what we do is we have all the messages that are there added by the user in a particular thread. Now we have to pass that thread, that conversation context to a particular LLM. So we do that through an assistant.id, and this ID is accessible from the assistant object that you just created. Where is it? Yeah, here. Or in the UI, you can use this thing. This is the assistant ID uh, that you can use to run a particular thread. Yeah. So once you give this thing for run, this is not something that is, I mean, it is not running. It is not running on your system. So then you have to constantly check whether this operation that you have given for run has it, has it been executed on the servers of OpenAI. So to do that, we constantly retrieve the run status, and yeah, once that is done, where when we know that the run has completed, then the message from the assistant, which is your LLM here, will be appended to the thread. So what will happen next is that you will list all the messages that are there in your thread, and then in these messages, you will find the last message that has been there from the assistant for this particular run ID. So again, their overview and their documentation is not um, really straightforward. So I am giving the extra context here of how things happen. Um, yeah. So just to recap of the flow. So every time we are creating a new sort of a conversation between an LLM and a user, we create a thread. In this thread, we pass all the messages that are there, which are either given by the user or which are given by the LLM. So let's say user entered three messages, and now we want to ask LLM to respond to that. So we will run these three messages through an assistant, and that assistant will reply back some message. Now this thread has total four messages. After this, the user might enter something more. So let's say after this, the user entered two more messages. Now you will pass this entire six message conversation to the assistant again, and then it will reply back to whatever it deems as the answer to those context of those six messages. So on a very high level, this is the overview of how the flow is with the assistant API. And I think we can, for code interpreter, we can understand this language. So let's say if a user sends this question, right? I need to solve. Uh, okay, they are not using tools here. We'll cover this example when they are explaining tools. Yeah, so basically, as we discussed, a thread keeps track of the user's message and assistant's message, and run allows you to run these messages in the thread via an LLM or using external tools. Uh, so it is done, context window management is done internally by the threads, so we don't have to worry about that. And yeah, this is important. So whenever you give the thread for a run for a particular assistant, there are certain states that it can go to. So whenever you initiate a run, it will start from the state of queued, and from here it usually goes into in progress. And so when the run is in progress, that is when basically LLM is running and giving a solution to what might be needed next. So if you are using a tool in to if you need a tool to answer your question, then the of the state of the run will go to requires action. So basically what happens is, let's say in the case of function calling, when it is in requires action, so basically it will give you the result, okay, what function you need to run and what are the parameters. So then your code internally has to run that function and also upload the result of the run to the language model. They also upload the result into the thread, so that the language model can then later understand the whatever the result was and then give you an answer based on that. So this is something that while writing code only, it hit me that whenever there's a requires action part, the run status will go back to queued again. And the final state of this run object it will either be from expired, completed, failed, or cancelled. So we keep checking whether the run status has completed or not, and once it is completed, we get the um, yeah, once it is completed, we get whatever the results that we are seeking for. So I will now switch to code to show how this can be done in code. Um, yeah. So this is the example that is there in the documentation itself. So it should be quite uh, straightforward. So yeah, so here we are creating an assistant, and we're creating a thread. So thread, as I discussed earlier, is represents a conversation. So we are only handling one conversation. So if this notebook, same notebook, was being run by 10 different people, the results, it would generate different thread IDs for each of those persons, and in such a way the context would be different for all of them. Now to this thread, we are basically passing this equation, passing this question that I need to solve the equation, this particular equation, can you help me? And this is just a message. So it gets stored as a thread message, and yeah, in the value you can see the same prompt is present. Now we have to, this is basically at any time you can list all the messages that are there in a particular thread. So now we have only added one message here. So there is only yeah, there is only one message here that you can see. Now to pass this prompt to a language model, we'll have to create a run object. So we create a run object where we pass this thread ID that is there for the current user, the assistant ID that is from that we get from here, and yeah, so we have the run object here, and we can delete this one. Basically, you can give instructions on an individual run also. If you do a run like this, then this is an important part. You just can't um, wait. So earlier when I I wrote code, I was just checking if the run status is equal to completed, and that never happened. And while debugging also, because we don't know, because I was not very aware of what all states that it could go to. So a better way to do this is to check the run status is this. So at you have to check whether the status is either queued or in progress, because if it is not in any of these two states, basically then either you require some action, or the run has failed. So you keep checking the run status, and you keep going to sleep until until your run status is finally completed. Now if you see, now earlier there was only a single message in our thread, right? So this was the message that we added, which is I need to solve equation of 3x plus 11 equal to 14. Can you help me? Now that we passed our this question through the LLM, the LLM has responded, and that thing is added in the thread also, the whatever answer the LLM gave. So the LLM responded with the solution to the equation 3x plus 11 equal to 14 is 3 is x equal to 1. So whatever the language model returned, it is now present here. It is present in the same thread. So if we had given, let's say, code interpreter here in tools, okay, we have given code interpreter. So what would happen in this flow is that it will start in queued, it will go to in progress, and it will go to requires action. But when we are using code interpreter, there is not an action that we have to take it from our side. That would be done on the API side itself, that they will initiate a code interpreter and give the code and pass the values to that. And it will then again go to queued, where and the next time it goes to in progress, basically the model will be evaluating what the answer what the answer was there from the code interpreter, and trying to understand what was the question and then give the final answer. And when that happens, we are in the completed state. So oh, this is different. Yeah. So this is usage of how to leverage code interpreter. Now here you could have mentioned any different mathematical equation that you wanted to do. Obviously, it won't be able to solve very complex mathematical problems. But yeah, this is how you can leverage code interpreter to do your thing. Next, we will discuss about how we can leverage retrieval. So yeah, basically you create a client. So this is something different in the newer version of the OpenAI library. Previously, you can directly do everything, even chat completion, through this OpenAI object also. But now you have to do everything via a client. So OpenAI API also gives option to upload files, and if I remember correctly, there is some 100 GB maximum total file size allowed. And yeah, so you can upload any. I don't remember seeing a restriction on file types. So they themselves, if we don't mention the file type, they will write a program which will help them understand what is the extension of this file. So yeah, you can upload different kinds of files. So basically, I uploaded here my the invoices that I had from AWS for 2 separate months. So I uploaded these two PDF files, and if you see here, basically it creates a file object for each one of them. And now, when I am creating an assistant in tools, I have to mention the type retrieval to be able to leverage these files here. Okay. And when I'm creating assistants, I have to mention the file IDs also, which can be used to answer the questions that user can ask. So here I created an assistant named read invoice, and I gave the instruction that your job is to help get relevant information from invoices. Given invoice files, user can ask different kinds of information. So a very basic description of the job. So this description here can be understood as the system prompt that we give in OpenAI, yeah, in OpenAI Playground or in OpenAI API also, while trying to do chat completions. Again, we create a thread. So a part of the file IDs will be part of the thread also, because we have to link this information with the thread also. Now and in the thread, we basically ask create a three data, like, okay, it should be 3D visualization based spending present on these invoice files, and the files are file 1 and file 2. Now what we do is we pass these through our assistant. We pass the thread and the assistant, and we basically wait for the run to complete. So if you see, a lot of thing has been done in the same thread now. So here I'm printing all the messages that are there in this thread that I created here. Okay, in this thread. So you can see a lot of things are happening. So basically, this is the input that I gave, that create a 3D visualization. And then the assistant basically said that, okay, both files are recognized as binary files, and it is trying to understand what kind of file it is there. And the next thing it happens is that uh, then it is still trying to figure out which file it is. So basically it figures out that it will use a PDF reader library to extract the text content. And then next what happens is that it is able to read that PDF file, and it knows what is there. So the information in the files is the AWS account statement, like billing number and all those things. And once it knew what what is the content of the file. It was able to, it did the same thing for the second PDF file also. And then one very interesting thing was that the final output, if you see, right, it is doing processing here, it is reading the file, it is trying to understand how to make the visualization and what to do. And the final result that it gives me is an image file. So uh, if the final result is an image, which if you are using GPT-4, here it can, it has access to DALI also, so you can get a image file as an output also. So in the thread itself, it adds the final output as an image file, which you can download using options that are given in the API. So again, this just shows the power of assistants, because I just asked to create 3D visualization and to show the spending in these files. I didn't write any code of explaining or taking care of what is the format of the file or try giving any error handling. It did all that on its own by iteratively, it will be in a particular state, it will decide what next step should be, then it does that next step using different tools. And when after using tools, it will be on a newer state, and then it will decide the next step on that new state. So to do through all that, it basically, yeah, in the end, it gives an image file as a result. So yeah, it is really interesting to just do all this just by writing a simple line of input prompt.
Were
And
you
this
able to
gets here
visualize
when
the image
when
or
you,
graph?
yeah,
Were you able to visualize the image slash graph?
sorry, what?
Were you able to visualize the image slash graph?
I didn't download it, but I just saw it's an image file. I didn't want to see actually what it was, because yeah,
How do you know if it's right then?
yeah.
How do you know if it's right if you didn't see it?
I was just testing for its capabilities. I was not really interested in the visualization. I mean, this thing I noticed today only. So I had written this code some time back, and but yeah. So if you see, it is giving file ID, right? It's an image file, and it is file ID. You can use this file ID to download that. Just how you're uploading files here, right? You can download also.
Got it.
Yeah. And if it's not an image file, so basically it has different ways of mentioning what, so message content, image file, message content, text. So yeah.
Did you
So
add this into your product already, or are you just
yeah,
experimenting?
I've been able to, I'll show that it is already linked. So I have been using function calling, which is here, which I'll discuss quickly. um, yeah. So again, so this was basically whatever capabilities um our API assistant already has, but that is only limited to code retrieval and sorry, code interpreter and your retrieval. Again, code interpreter gives it a very huge range of possibilities of, like here trying to figure out what is the file format. It can do that via writing code. So all these smaller problems it can do easily. But let's say if you want your assistant to have access to much more complex problems or much more complex functions that you have written um, for your own sorry, yeah, for your own use case. For example, if you have a huge SQL database, right, you can rely on whatever the API assistant will come up with, the SQL query that it can. But you can write your own custom functions also to have better control over it. So here in this example, again, we are using a very rudimentary example of get current weather, but we'll soon see a much more, bigger use case or much more complex use case. So yeah, again, so the you are we are creating an assistant here, and uh, so the instructions are: you are a weather bot, use the provided functions to answer the question. And here in tools, we are passing functions here. Now to do that, we have to pass this format, giving information about the function. So if you see here, this type function, in our previous case, it was something like type retrieval. So we didn't really have to mention any more than that. But now that we are mentioning our functions, we have to give the information of what is the name of the function, what is the description, basically what does the function do, and what kind of parameters you can expect that are required for the that are needed for the function to run. So again, the parameter is an object whose property is, again, which will be the individual parameters that will be passed to the function. So here it is location, and which is a type, whose type would be string, and then you have to give description of each parameter what that is. And another one is unit, and what will be the data type of that parameter, and yeah, enum information also you can give here. Then you have to, I'm not sure if you always have to give this, but I think it's a good practice to mention what are the required parameters here. So here location is important, and you give this is just a dummy function to showcase that if we'll know why they have given this function. So basically it's get the nickname of a city, and you follow the same procedure here of defining the function. Now let's create a thread where we ask what is the temperature in San Francisco. And yeah, now when we run it, we have to we are waiting for the run to complete, and uh, okay, basically okay, I'll show the same example. So you can do this thing via an assistant API, and also using chat completions. So here again, now we are passing basic there are a few differences, like in the kind of responses that you'll get if you're doing it via chat completion and when you're doing an assistant API. So we will see that in the code, because in the code I have implemented through assistant API only. But to get the idea of how to use function calling, we can look at this example here. So here we give the same information. Now tools here is the same thing, the same function definition that we have given, and you give the model name, everything. Okay. Now here, if you see, it is giving us the, if you see the response, it has the parameter called tool calls enabled. So basically, what it has given is that the function that we have to use. So the arguments to the function will be location San Francisco, California, unit Celsius, and the name of the function, which is get current weather. And this is the type function. So basically in tool calls, you will get the option to instead of normal text, they will have, okay, these are the tools that you need to call, and you will have the function name and the parameters. So here, if you see, we asked what is the weather like in San Francisco, Tokyo, and Paris. So it was able to create three tool calls. Okay, so here it is trying to get the the temperature in San Francisco. Here again, it is calling the same function, but for Tokyo, Japan. And there should be one more, I can't see here, Paris, France, and the same function. So uh, a new feature that they announced in dev days, like you can have multiple parallel tool calls here. So by just writing one line like this, you in the backend you can generate three function calls, and then you can individually wait. So yeah, we'll see how we can execute each one of them. So if in the response you get tool calls, then you have to create a map of available function. Here in the case there is only one, but in our code example we'll see a case for two functions. And then we basically find what is the name of the function, which is here get current weather. We map it to the function that are available in our code. Now these function arguments, right, we have to do a json load s, because sometimes there will be an extra backslash n here for longer statements, which is not here, but it is wiser to use json.load s to do this. And then if you do that, you have your function argument there. Then basically it is as easy as just to do function to call and the parameters that are there. And actually you don't even need to do location or unit here. You can just mention double star function args, so that will take care of itself. So for each different kind of function you don't have to worry about naming different parameters.
Wait, just a question. Why are you specifying the function to call? Shouldn't it, doesn't it figure that out itself?
Which one?
Doesn't it figure out the tool to call? Why are you specifying the arguments for the
Basically there
function?
is only one function here, right? So
Yeah, but let's say you have 10. Then how are you going to specify the arguments yourself for everyone?
yeah, you can. So here you can just do this. Yeah, that will also work. You don't have to worry about giving for individual function. I
And
tried
this
it.
is not using the assistant API, right? This is just function calling.
Yeah, this is using chat completion.
Okay.
So here we are not using assistant API, but the same
So
thing
for
can be.
chat, the chat completion, they don't store messages, right? It just, you handle storing messages. It just handles the tool calling for you.
Yeah, it will basically whatever that you want to store, you will be storing it in a thread, and you use the assistant to run different threads.
Wait, no, no, but if you're using function calling without assistant API, it doesn't have threads and it doesn't have the conversation storage, right?
Yeah, you'll have to maintain that on your own.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
pass in history to this or no?
What?
Can you pass in a conversation like history to this function calling endpoint?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, here you're giving this as an input, right?
Okay, yeah, got it.
So you can create as many messages here inside this list. Basically, if you have different kinds of questions or entire conversation, you can fit it here, and these messages will go in this chat completion.
So essentially, function calling is the same as assistant API if you don't want them to handle the thread storage and execution. If you want control over that, you can use this instead, right?
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. But if you're in a very production side conversation setting, it does make more sense to use thread. But if you just want
But I mean, in a lot of cases, you don't want OpenAI to store your messages, and I don't think you can use Assistant API if you don't want them to store your entire conversation.
mm, yeah, it makes sense. But anyway, if you're passing it, if you don't use assistant API and you're using chat completion, that is also reaching them, right? I mean,
That's also what?
that is also reaching them, right? If you're doing chat.completion, then your
Yeah, yeah, but
conversation.
they're not storing your conversation. They'll just use it to generate the response, right? But they don't have like a log of your entire history.
Yeah, that is there. Yeah, because
Like
they are.
if you have some issue of like persisting data kind of thing, then I like a lot of people can't use assistant API because of that, right? So it looks like if this has the same, you can, if you store your own local history, right? You can just pass it to this, and then it supports the same function calling. Does it also support retrieval and
No,
no?
that is there. No.
Okay, so it only has the custom function definition.
Yeah, I mean, function calling as a feature came some time back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never tried it at that point, but got it.
Yeah, but it has gotten better now.
Got it.
Mm. So yeah, this was the notebook where we discuss a very basic use case. I will now talk about how you can integrate it in bigger applications. So I'll show the application once. Where is it? Uh, yeah, basically this is the application. I will just try to show it once on how to use it. Wait. Yeah, so I can take any video and I can just task. So remove all the endpoints also. Yes, this. So this thing that is coming here, it is not through OpenAI. There is some backend function that I've already written, and it is able to identify based on this query which backend function to call. So I have two major functions in the backend, which is one is to summarize videos and the other one is to summarize entire channels. So basically, it will retrieve all the messages that are there, all the videos that were released in the past 2 to 3 weeks on that channel and summarize each and every one of them. So just a second. Sometimes this API thing is slow because for each run it will have to ask again and again whether the execution of that run has finished in the backend or not. So yeah, this is the idea. So again, here you can ask any details about the video. Now that the summarization of the video will be in the context of the chatbot, you can basically ask anything related to this conversation. You can pass multiple any number of videos that you want at the same time, and in the backend it will generate function calls for each and every video separately. And yeah, so to show how this thing happens in the backend, yeah. So here I'm creating my assistant, and here I have not given a very simple two-sentence description, but I tried telling it the exposure of what all functions that are available to you so that it can. I said that you can help in summarizing one or many YouTube videos. You can retrieve and summarize latest videos from YouTube channel from last 3 weeks. So what all capabilities that I have in the code that is also added here. And now in the tools, I have mentioned function definition. So uh, one interesting thing that I had an issue with was, let's say if I have a list of strings that I want to pass. Uh, so basically, you have to mention that this parameter is a type of array, and each item in that parameter is of type string. And here there are two functions. One is process videos, the other one is process channels. So in the description, I have given what the capabilities of that function is and description of each and every parameter. So list of YouTube video or URL in string format to process by the function. And search terms. So these functions, basically, if you want to create a general summary or you want a summary around specific topics, So I already have function for this, which is there in the backend. So it is taking search terms. So I have to give definitions like this. Again, this is not mandatory, uh, a required parameter. So the assistant has to understand that if there is nothing, talked about a specific topic or a search term, it will just invoke this function with only this parameter and none value for this. Again, the second function is process channels and a much bigger summary of what the function does. And like summary of n weeks, this function, this parameter is a number, and I can give default values also. And if this parameter is boolean, so yeah. So it is not really, I don't know how these function definitions are created, like what language is this or what method is this exactly. But yeah, for boolean and integer values, you have to mention these values like this. And so once I have created my assistant with all the function definitions, um, the user inputs, whatever input that the user gives, it is added. Yeah, it is added to the thread. You see here, I have already created a thread here. So I'm maintaining a persistent thread ID for a particular user. So once I create a thread, I put that thread in my session state, and basically I will use the same thread ID to keep on the conversation for the user. Yeah. So yeah. Now I have created the thread. Then whatever the input that the user gave, I am adding it to the to the thread ID. Then I'm creating a run and passing on that message to the model. And yeah, I'm checking whether the run is completed or not. Now, since I'll be using function calling, this is something that we have to keep in mind. So because in code interpreter, this requires action part would be handled internally, but whenever there is a required action, it basically means for function calling that you will have to call the function, and whatever the results are of that function calling, right? You will have to append that also as submit tool outputs for the LLM to understand. So here it is the same thing that we did there, that trying to identify which function to call and which function, which what will be the parameters, the function arguments, and then I'm passing and running that function here. And whatever response that I get, I am maintaining. Uh, in the example we saw, right, you can at the same time ask what is the temperature in Tokyo, Paris, and San Francisco. So for a single call, there can be multiple tool calls also. Then I have to keep a dictionary of for what particular tool call ID, which what was the function response, and then I have to append these results to the thread. So whatever results are there, I'm submitting the tool output for that thread. And once that is done, the LLM will output, some sort of suggestion or some sort of a result on based on whatever these tool outputs that we got. So mm, no, it got stuck here. But yeah, this is the whatever I wanted to discuss about assistant API and function calling. So again, previously what I had was something like this. Previously what I had was something like this. So a person will have to read all this and give the configuration, enter all these values, then enter the topics they're interested in. They won't even, it's a high chance that they won't even understand. But here, if I give the configuration key, uh, here they can directly enter the API key, and they can ask whatever they want in a simple format. That's it. So it just makes it much more intuitive, I think, to be able to use the application.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you, guys.
Cool, cool, cool. Thanks, Akash. Yep. I think I've used the OpenAI Assistant API for some work stuff. The function, but I think the biggest issue we were having there is just that for legal issues we can't have them start a conversation. So yeah, I'll try function calling a bit more. That seems to be a good middle ground. Nice. Your thing looks cool though. Maybe share the link in our channel so other people can try it out if you want. You're on mute in case you're saying anything.
Yeah, I will share it soon. I think it is a bit buggy right now. I will fix the bugs and I will share it in the channel. Yeah.